There's some Guilty Gear Strive characters who have just dominated tournaments, but others, well, they're just praying to the backyard just to see a crumb of a top 8. Today, we're going to dive into every major tournament that has been a part of the Arc World Tour since Guilty Gear Strive dropped, so we can get the answer to 2 important questions. Which characters have dominated throughout Strive's history and by how much? And more importantly, which characters have been the worst over the last few years? So if we pick them, we can use this for some juicy downplay ammo. Anyway, so the way we're going to do this is pretty simple. As I mentioned, we're going to go over every single tournament that has been a part of the Arc World Tour since the game launched, and there have been a lot. We're going to award points to the characters who make the top 8s of this event, and the scoring is pretty simple. If a character gets first place, they're going to get 8 points, and if a character gets 8th place, they're going to get 1. So it's going to start at 8 points and work its way down to 1 depending on how well the character did. This is how TFT awards points at their tournament, so I thought it'd be easy to copy. Obviously, 2 characters tie for 7th in fighting game tournaments, so they'll get 1.5 each instead of 1 and 2. We're going to go year by year so we can see which characters dominated throughout the different eras of the game, and then we'll come back to it at the end to add them all up and get a better picture of the game's entire history. Now, I want to quickly mention that behind all these characters, there's obviously very talented players. This isn't meant to discredit any player who pilots these characters that do very well, or to make a tier list based on which characters carry the hardest or anything like that. But if you play a character who's low on this list, feel free to use this as ammo. Anyway, before we get started, I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below which characters you think will be the top 3 in the game's history, and let me know which ones you think will be the worst. Obviously, some newer characters in late DLCs will naturally be at the bottom, but I'm curious what you guys think on some of the base rosters or the Season 1 characters which have struggled the hardest. And while you're down there, I'd really appreciate if you like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps out a ton, and I want to make more videos like this, so I would really appreciate it. Anyway, let's get started. So the first Arc World Tour was actually from 2018 to 2019, but obviously Strive was not out at this point. And then in 2022, the tour got cancelled because the entire world was having like a long patch maintenance, so we had to fast forward to Arc World Tour 2022, where the tour starts back up and we get these 9 tournaments starting with EVO 2022 on August 7th, 2022. And we're going to go all the way up to the Arc World Tour Finals on March 11th, 2023. Just to bring some context into this, by the time EVO kicked off this tour, Testament was the newest DLC character, and spoiler alert for back in 2022, Bridget would be released right after EVO. Sin would also be released about halfway through the season, and then Bedman and Beyond would all be released afterwards, so they aren't eligible for any points yet. So here's the tournaments we're going to be covering, and let's get into it. Our biggest losers for Arc World Tour 2022 were actually Potemkin and Testament. Neither of these characters would appear in a single top 8 throughout the entire season. Next up, we have quite a few characters who have 1.5 points, which means they tied for 7th a single time. These characters were Milia, alongside 3 DLC characters in Jacko, Bridget, and Sin. Milia was used as a secondary by Punk when he placed in the top 8 at Versus Fighting X. Bridget and Sin were used by Dyphone in his top 8 run at Frosty Faustings, and Jacko was piloted by Ed Venture at the same tournament. Next up, we have 2 characters who tied at 7 points, which are Faust and Anji. Anji's 7 points were all in one go when Jiro came second at the Rev Major 2022. Every other entry in this list has multiple results added up, so I don't want the video to go on forever, but it's cool to just talk about the one-offs. After that, we have Ino at 9.5 points, Baiken at 10. Then we have Mei with only 12 points the entire season. This is a little surprising as she was considered to be a powerhouse character and also the origin of the Latif soundbite. But as many people would know, when it comes to her representation at the very top, almost all of her results were kind of carried by Slash. Anyway, after that we have Axel at 14.5 points, which is also funny that he's higher than Mei, as they tend to reside on different sides of the tier lists. Then we have Gold Lewis at 16.5 points, Giovanna at 18.5, and then Kai at 20. From here on, we have a lot of the characters that people kind of consider top tier and pretty consistently good throughout the game's life. First up, we have Chip and Ramlethal tying at 25 points each. And our top 5 characters in terms of the results of the Arc World Tour 2022 top 8s. At number 5, we have Leo Whitefang with 31.5 points. At number 4, we had Happy Chaos with 36.5 points. At number 3, we had Nago Ryuki at 43.5 points. This one surprised me quite a bit. For some reason, he was in the top 2 in my head because I just swear I saw him on every stream and every other match. But he was surpassed by our number 2 character, who was Soul Bad Guy at 46.5 points. Not that surprising, he was considered the best, if not one of the best characters for a lot of this game's early life. And as you may have noticed, this list has been steadily increasing. Characters are often within a couple of points of the last person on the list, but our number 1 character of this season was Zato, who had almost 20 more points than our number 2 character of Soul. Zato finished the season with 65.5 points, and I promise you, he was not that good, and it was just 10 different players who contributed to this chart being more talented and a stronger player base than all these other strong characters. Alright, I'm memeing a little bit here, but yeah, it's pretty impressive how often Zato was top 8ing at these major events during the 2022 season. I will mention, however, that although he did place in the top 8s very often, Sol was a character who had the most flat-out wins in 3. One of which being the conclusion to the entire season when Mochi won Arc World Tour 2022 finals. Okay, so I'll just put on a quick rundown of the placings that you can see. As I mentioned, we ranged from 0 points all the way up to 65.5 for our first season. A little spoiler alert, this range may increase in the coming seasons as we have much more tournaments in the following seasons, as well as much more dominant performances from one or two particular characters. Alright, so let's get straight into 2023. This time around we have 14 tournaments which kicked off at Head Stomper 2023 on June 11th of 2023 and then ended with the Arc World Tour Finals on March 23rd, 2024. For quick context again of the characters that were coming out, or came out during the season. Before Head Stomper on June 11th, Asuka was the newest character to be released a few weeks prior. Then Johnny released on August 24th and Elfel on December 8th. Abba would then be the next character to release, but she would be on March 26th, just a few days after this season ends. So she's not eligible just yet. So we only have a single character in the 0 point tier this time around, and that is Bedman at 0 points. This character was still relatively new at this point and not considered particularly good, so this isn't too surprising. Testament finally joins the leaderboard after getting 0 points last season, thanks to Frail Fox's 7th place finish at Battle Arena Melbourne 13. Axel only has 3.5 points this season, quite the fall off with Mystic Smash's 5th place finish at Brussels Challenge Major Edition 2023. Elfelt has 7 points when she was used as a secondary by Tempest at Frosty Faustings, and that's it for our one-off placers. After that we have Potemkin at 10.5 points, Jacko was at 11, Milia at 11.5, Anji and Gold Lewis tied at 12.5, Baiken at 13.5, Geo had 15.5, Chip and Ram, who were tied just outside the top 5 last season, have a little bit of a fall off. Chip only got 16 points while Ram got 19.5, tying with Johnny. Bridget had 21 points followed by Eno's 21.5. And then starting up our top 10 for the season, we have Asuka at 10th place with 22.5, which is pretty impressive. As I mentioned earlier, he was a new character for this season and one that clearly required quite a bit of time just to get comfortable on, so cracking the top 10 is a really good start. Then we had Mei at 28 points, Kai Kisuke and Faust tying with 29.5, quite a good showing for Faust. And then we had Sin at 31.5 points, and finally we have our top 5, and you're probably used to seeing these characters because it's the exact same top 5 as our first season, but the order swapped a little bit. Leo sits at number 5 for 2 seasons in a row though with 44 points. Our absolute god of season 1, Zato 1, sits at a humble 51.5 points this time around, earning him a 4th place finish over the year. Sol moves down 1 spot from 2nd down to 3rd with his 52.5 points. Nago, who finished 3rd last season, swaps spots with Sol, and he's up to 58 points. And remember last time how I mentioned that the list was kind of close and then Zato just pulls 20 points out of his ass and is way higher than 2nd place? This blue motherfucker Happy Chaos makes that look like a joke by comparison, as he finished this season with 95 points, almost 40 more than 2nd place. You could literally remove half of this man's placings and he would still be in the top 5 of this season. Absolutely insane showing for Happy Chaos, but if you remember correctly, after this showing, the word on the street, aka the Happy Chaos mains on Twitter, we're saying that he got nerfed to become a mid-tier in the following seasons, so things may not stay the same going forward, but let's just go straight into the Arc World Tour 2024 season though, to see how things get shaken up after some balance changes and new characters are introduced. Okay, and for the 2024 season, which kicked off on April 29th with EVO Japan, and spanned all the way to the Arc World Tour Finals on March 3rd of this year, this is our biggest season yet, as there are 27 different tournaments that were a part of the tour this time around. And for context, as I mentioned in the last season, ABBA came out right after the last season ended, followed by Slayer, who comes out about a month into this season. Then we got Dizzy towards the later half of this season, and then finally Venom was a little too late for the party and did not come out in time for this season, as he came out a few weeks after the finals on March 24th, 2025. The interesting thing about this season is that there isn't a single character who only has a single result as an entry like the previous season. So every character who got any points made it to at least 2 top 8s, which is pretty cool. What isn't cool though is that if you play the characters that didn't get any points, because there are still a few of those. There's actually only 2 characters who did not make a single top 8 in this season. Can you guess who it is? And Venom and Lucy don't count as they're not out yet. Our biggest losers of this season are actually base roster characters in Axel and Testament. And Axel had a strong start in the first season as we talked about earlier, but he's also been struggling ever since and sat at 0 points for this entire 2024 season. After these two, we have Bedman at 10 points, we had Dizzy at 12 points. Both of these characters are DLCs who were considered pretty bad, so it's not surprising to see them this low. Especially Dizzy, who was pretty new at the time and pretty much used as a secondary for a lot of people while they learned her. Zato, our king of season 1, sits at a measly 18 points for this entire season. Then we have Giovanna at 22.5, Eno at 24.5, which is funny because she actually had strong individual showings with a first place at SCA Major and 2 fourth place finishes, but overall not the best showing over the course of the entire season. Then we have Elfelt at 25.5 points, Potemkin at 27, Chip and Milia tied at 27.5, Anji and Jacko tied at 29.5, Baiken had 31, Ramlethal had 33.5, Faust somehow gets more points than Ram with 34.5, and then Bridget with 36.5, May has 40 points, Johnny has 44, and then we get into our top 10, and for the second time in a row, the character who starts our top 10 is Asuka at 48 points. Kai is right after him at 9th with 53 points. Missing out on the top 5 for the first time ever, we have Leo at 60.5 points, and then we had Slayer at 62.5. After that, we have Sin at 69 points. Nice. And our top 5, we have Nago, who has yet to miss out on a single top 5, but this is his lowest season yet. Gold Lewis was in 4th place with quite a big gap after Nago, and he had 98.5 points. The top 4 was pretty standout in this regard as they were kind of a league above everyone else in terms of points. At 100 points, we had Abba. It's obviously worth mentioning that she was used mostly as a secondary, probably more than any other character that got points throughout this list. And regaining a top 2 spot, we have Soul Bad Guy, who had 106.5 points. And once again, who's surprised? We had a massive gap of almost 40 points because Happy Chaos tops another season with 146 points. The most successful mid-tier in fighting game history. And that wraps up the 2024 Arc World Tour season. And this is the last complete season we've had so far, as we're currently in the middle of the 2025 season, but that still means we have quite a few more events to go over before we can check our scores for the game's entire history. Once again, EVO Japan kicks off this season as our first Arc World Tour event back in May 10th. As of the recording of this video, the most recent Arc World Tour was ArcRevo in Senzan 2025, which was just last weekend. This is pretty good as it gives us 15 more tournaments to go through to distribute points for this list, but funnily enough, there's actually exactly 15 more tournaments left in the season, including the finals. In terms of context for the characters, well, we don't really need that much anymore. As I mentioned last time, Venom came out just a little after the last finals. And since then, every single playable character to date has came out, starting with Unica, and then finally Lucy, who's been out for only about 2 weeks at this point. So let's get right into the rankings. This is actually the season with the most amount of characters that have had 0 showings so far. Does this mean Guilty Gear is getting less balance as time goes on? Well, not really, because as I said, Lucy's been out for 2 weeks. And on top of that, obviously we're only halfway through the season, like I mentioned so far. Obviously, Lucy has 0 points, and alongside her we have Testament, who's just had a rough history throughout this game's life. This is the 3rd out of 4 seasons where they have 0 points. We also have Elfelt and Venom sitting at 0 points as well. It is worth mentioning though that Venom was extremely close as Gobo placed 9th place at EVO Japan, which was the first tournament of this season. Then we have Unica with 1.5 points, who was used during Sammy's 7th place run at Hessen Crash. Anji had 5 points with Jiro's 4th place finish at ArcRevo in Senzan just last weekend. May has 6 points with Slash's 3rd place finish at Brussels Challenge Major Edition. Asuka has 8 points so far, which is looking like his slowest start to his season since he came out, but he did just get buffed, so we'll see how that plays out. Axel has a steady rise so far a little bit with 9.5 points. Faust and Dizzy are tied at 11. Nago has his worst showing by a mile so far with only 12 points in this season so far. Soul actually follows suit with his worst start with only 13 points, and 8 of them were actually last weekend. When I first started making this video, he only had 5 points, but Tatuma actually came first last weekend, so now he's up to 13. Zato and Slayer are both tied with Soul at 13 points. Milia has 14 points so far, also getting some last weekend. Bedman is 1 point higher with 15. Abba has had a little bit of a fall off with 18, but she also just kind of got buffed. Ino is tied at 18 as well. Kai Kisuke at 18.5. Gold Lewis sits at 20 points so far, which is the first member of our top 10 in the 2025 season. And then at 9th, we had Baiken at 23. Ramlethal is next at 26.5. Geo after that, 27.5. And then we have Chip, who has 31 points. After Chip, we have a little bit of a gap with a 14.5 point jump, which is kind of fitting because this separates our top 5. At 5th place of this season, we have Potemkin so far at 45.5 points. Johnny is after him at 46 points, really close. Leo's only 1 point after that, so there's such a small gap between these 3, and that makes Leo our 3rd place finisher. A little bit of a gap after that, we have Sin, who is having a really strong season at 69.5 points. His 2nd time being in the 69s. What a memer. And who would have guessed it, with another huge gap, our most successful character for another season so far is Happy Chaos at 82.5 points. The most hilarious part is that every character in this top 5 got pretty decent nerfs except for Happy Chaos, who has already built himself such a big lead before that patch even came out. So if I had to bet which character tops this list by the end of the season, I think the funny blue man will hit the 3-peat with 3 top seasons in a row. And that, my friends, is a quick recap of every season of Guilty Gear Strive's competitive history. but we still have to see the grand totals. It took me a while to go through every tournament and make these sheets, but it was honestly pretty fun to revisit some of these old memories and reminisce on some of the older seasons, only to kind of realize not that much has changed besides some fall-offs like Zato, but we still see a lot of the same characters towards the top. But we are fresh on a new patch, so we'll see how this newest season finishes up. Anyway, let's get into the total. So for our most successful characters in Guilty Gear Strive's history, our worst ones at 0 points are Venom and Lucy. This doesn't really count, and I doubt they'll remain at 0 as both these characters are pretty new and only have this current season to get points in. But besides these two, the character which I believe is the biggest loser in terms of results at this level is Testament. As I mentioned at the start, the first tournament to kick off this list was EVO 2022, and by that point Testament was already out for over 4 months. So even though they were the last DLC character of Season 1, they've been available for every tournament on this list and still only managed to get a single 7th place finish since 2022. Tied with Testament, we have Unica at 1.5. She's also really new, and I'm sure she'll get more points as people get used to her. And after that, we have a jump all the way up to 23 points, so not too many characters are in the dumpster. And we have Dizzy at 23. I imagine this goes up as well, especially because she's been buffed, and the buffs are kind of proving to be much more than people expected. After her, we have Bedman at 25. Axel is our 7th lowest character, but I'd also give him one of the biggest loser awards, as he's the lowest character on this list that was on the base roster, which means people have had the most amount of times to flesh him out and get used to him and main him if they want to. Funnily enough, his best season by far was the first one though, and he's only kind of went downhill from there, but this recent season he's had some more life in him. After Axel, we have Elfeld at 32.5 points. Not the worst considering she was a Season 3 DLC character, but not great either. Joining Axel as characters from the base roster that haven't done well, we have Anji at 54 points and Milia just 0.5 points above him. Then Jacko at 60.5 points, Bridget follows that with 72.5, Eno finished with 73.5, Slayer has 75.5, Baiken at 77.5, Asuka at 78.5, Faust doing much better than I expected over this game's life with 82 points, not that bad. Potemkin has 83 points, but many expect this to go much higher as it's been trending upwards thanks to Arxis' best efforts. Geo was 1 point higher than him at 84, May 2 higher than that at 86, and then we have a little bit of a gap where Chip has 99.5 points. And then Ramlethal is just outside of our top 10 with 104.5 as our 11th most successful character. And finally, we have our top 10 characters of this list. The characters you have probably seen the most if you tune into top 8s for ArcRevo Tour events. And at number 10, we have Johnny at 109.5. This is pretty impressive considering he was relatively late to the party and also released in not a strong state. After Johnny, we have Abba with 118, who is also pretty late to the party and is an abomination of a character, so I probably don't need to explain this one, but she is often used as a secondary. Kai Kisuke holds the number 8 spot with 121 points. Honestly, very impressive. For some reason, I didn't expect him to be so high, but even just thinking of how often I see someone like Churara in top 8s, I guess this makes sense. At number 7, we have Gold Lewis Dickinson, who's a bit of a jump from Kai with 26.5 more points than him, sitting at 147.5 so far. Zato just barely does not make our top 5. This is our 6th most successful character, mostly off the back of his first 2 seasons with an impressive 148 points. Sin, who sits at number 5 with 171.5 points, is very similar to Johnny, although he came out much earlier. He wasn't in a great spot on release, got some good buffs, and then he's been racking up some points, but now he's nerfed, but I'm sure he still got some more points in him. Our number 4 character, who has consistently been pretty strong in every season, but never really topping this list, we have Leo Whitefang at 183 points. Our number 3 character is currently having his slowest start to a season, but throughout the game's life, he has had a really solid showing, and that is Nago Ryuki at 188 points. There's actually a bit of a jump in points when we go to our number 2 character with 30.5 more points than Nago. We have Soul Bad Guy, who lives up to his main character status. Is he even the main character, or is it like Kai? But Sin was kind of looking like the main character in that recent anime that I got like 3 episodes in, but even then Soul had a lot of screen time. And with 218.5 points throughout ArcRevo Tour history, Soul has had nothing but a consistently strong showing over the years. It is worth noting that the current season is his slowest start, but Tatsuma literally just won an event the night before I'm writing the script, so I'm sure he'll be fine. And I'm sure everybody and their mother knows who our number 1 character is, the most consistent mid-tier in fighting game history. We have Happy Chaos with, wait, this can't be right. Soul had 218 points, and that was already quite a bit higher than Nago. Surely Happy Chaos doesn't actually have 360 points, right? That's right, folks. Happy Chaos sits 141.5 more points than our number 2 character on this list. The gap between our number 1 and number 2 alone is enough to be the 8th most successful character in this game's history after Gold Lewis, which is pretty funny how much ahead of the game he's been. Everyone knows this character has dominated the meta since release, but it actually kind of blew my mind when actually going through the events. I originally had my rows in Google Sheets from A to Z and thought that it would surely be enough, as there usually weren't a crazy amount of tournaments per year. so that should be enough to record each result. But Happy Chaos made me add more rows and zoom out of the Google Sheet while I was trying to make them, because he just gets so many results. This dude was just showing up multiple times in top 8s, even made up half of a top 8 at EVO Japan this year, but to his defense, it was the bottom half. Either way, that is our list, and I hope you enjoyed a quick trip down memory lane as we recapped which characters have held that top 8 spotlight the most throughout the game's life. Guilty Gear Strive has much more to come, as there are plenty of events left in this season alone, and with the addition of their new rank system, many people are hopping back on. I think this game has a bright future ahead, and I'm excited to see which characters continue to dominate. Spoiler, it'll be Happy Chaos. If you want to see more Guilty Gear content or any FGC related stuff in the future, let me know what you'd like to see below. Thank you for watching and stay beautiful, my friends. I'll see you in the next one.